So, Mr. President, sir, I've been sending you communication for the past, I don't know, months, a long time now, probably on a year now. Anyway, but I mean, I contacted you because I need help. As a disabled veteran, I've been waiting 8 years now. The VA has stalled my hip replacement surgery. 8 years. 8 years. And whew, it's ground me down to my health has cascaded. In a cascading in a bad way. Cascade. Can it cascade in a good way? No, I suppose not. Anyway, cascading. You think about water going down, right? Going down over cascades. Good Lord. But I thought, why not reach out and see if I can get some help from you, because I'm a 2-branch veteran and I served honorably, even with distinction, in truth. So I thought, well, I had some things that happened to me while I was in the military that were pretty bad. My first service was even before I graduated from high school. I put that on hold, graduating, and went off to boot camp, Army boot camp, in the for the Army National Guard. The recruiter had to come out, or my parents could have gone to the recruiter, but he came out to our house, where my dad rented our house from the cement manufacturer, Medusa Cement Company, where we lived out in the country in Shenango Township, Pennsylvania, District 17. But the recruiter came out, and Mom and Dad signed me over to the federal government. Yeah, it's done sometimes, right? I don't know how young, where the shutoff is, but I turned 18 while I was going through boot camp at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I turned 18, so I don't know. It felt like a year, I had to wait, from the time but it wasn't quite that long. But anyway, why I bring that all up? Just want to give you a little bit of a history. While going through boot camp, something happened. We're all lined up to get our immunization shots, and then we were weeded out of the line. I was part of the group that was weeded out, I guess. Felt like a weed. I mean, when you hear about what they did to me, you'll know why I would say that. But we were put in a different shot line, and I had an adrenaline hit. That's why I remember it so well, like it was just yesterday. That's how it works, with adrenaline. It can really cause memories to stick, every detail. It's amazing, adrenaline is. But it's got deleterious side effects. You have to be careful with adrenaline. Adrenaline, man. When you're older, if you're not able to get up and move around to get that processed out of your body, like walking around, moving about, getting physical activity in, man, it can be bad, as it was for me. As it was for me. But what was done to me when I was going through Army boot camp is that the group that I was in, that we were weeded, pulled from out of, our battalion. Was it our battalion? Who were we with? Yeah, I think it was. That's how they had us in there. Anyway, I had this adrenaline hit. And it was serious. And I asked the nurse that was prepping us for the shots that we were going to receive. I leaned in. I'm like, hey, and it took, I would have got, yelled at or whatever. We were supposed to be quiet. And I said, what is going on? I said, why are we put in a separate line? My adrenaline didn't lie. Now, all of us that were in that line, that I knew that were in my platoon, we all got really sick. So sick that they had us take these other shots. I vaguely remember this. But what was really strange about it is that our senior drill instructor, Sergeant Canady, who was a real asshole, by the way, Sergeant Canady, he was really mean to us guys that were sick from the shots, what we were given in the shot line. He didn't give a shit. He had absolutely zero empathy. As a matter of fact, since we were the reason why his score, like the platoon score, was brought down really low and we had to qualify at the end of training, physical, the qualifications for the push-ups and for the sit-ups and for the run. What else was there? Man, I barely made it. I mean, and the other guys the same. One of the guys, he was so pissed off. We were so sick, man. So I was sicker than I'd ever been in my life. But then, as the years have gone by, that was 43 years ago. How I know that is that while I was going through training, that's when our Marines were killed in Beirut. When I was going through boot camp at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Yeah, but it seems just like yesterday. 1983. 43 years though. The same manifestation of the sickness would come back and visit me, and what it would be is like if I was in a situation where I hadn't got enough sleep, or you know what I'm saying, and whereas I was weakened, then it was like without fail, it would come back and get me. And I didn't have health care. But for maybe 2 years, well, my wife had carried me on her plan with Greater New York Insurance, who she worked for years in Manhattan. But besides that time, I didn't have any health care, and neither did she. So I would have to rely upon my mother could get her hands on antibiotics for veterinary care. She always had horses, and so I could take that. And the one that I recognized that I took the most was Bactrim. Bactrim is a real harsh though way to go, man. It always would make it really tough to get rid of, not to get rid of, but however the hell, kill the infection. It would lead to an infection, bacterial from the viral in my lungs, every time, and it would get to the point where I would have walking pneumonia, and it would turn out to be an emergency, even. But if I could get my hands on a multi-spectrum antibiotic, like a Z-Pack, 2 of those usually would do it, 2. But whether it's Quick Care or something like that, I didn't get involved with the VA. I was trying to stay away from the VA, and I didn't even go after any help at all until I absolutely had to have the 2 spinal fusions. It had put me down. I was doing everything I could, race against time to utilize what talent and work ethic I had, to hit it big. so that I could have the time off, for the surgeries. I knew it was coming. I knew that it would be something that I would need time to heal. I didn't realize how long it would take, though. I waited too long for the damn surgeries. When I went to the VA, they turned me away. Literally turned me away. When I was interviewed in New Jersey. Now, you think I'm bullshitting? Telling the truth. When I took a polygraph, I got this polygraph examiner who was a former government polygraph examiner. This guy was so freaking forget about it. He's not your friend. He wasn't going to help me in any way. And he, after he did his thing 4 times, that kind of a, really a tough, put me through it. He wanted to make sure I was, was telling the truth. It was funny, man. If he's going to help me, he wanted to know who the hell is this guy. I mean, I guess he hadn't had very many people at all, ever, that had asked him to help. I didn't have any money, and I needed a polygraph about something that was done to me while I was in the Air Force. And he did it for me. Can't think of his name. But anyway, it's in my records. And I just had a casual conversation, the interview process before he did the polygraph. He interviewed me. And one thing we got to talking about was me being turned away when I, went about my back and neck to the VA there in close to Somerset, I think, New Jersey. Anyway, so he asked that question about, were you turned away, when seeking help at the VA for your back. And of course, I was turned away. Talk about desperate, man. Holy shit. I felt like I was a gazelle on the Serengeti, man. Who had broken its leg or, couldn't move hardly. And I was done, man. It was that's what I felt like. I was like, I am, excuse my language, I am fucking done. That's what I felt like. I was like, holy shit, I am done. Surgeon even told me, he said, you waited too long. He said, you're going to have scar tissue, or you do have scar tissue, on your thecal sac. And he's telling me about this membrane that encases our spinal cord and our intravertebral discs. They when they're damaged and they herniate out, they poke up against that thecal sac, and then it becomes something that's inveterate when you have then discs that are degenerating after an injury. And that's the way he explained it to me. And he said, you'll form scar tissue. He said, you have. So that's going to leave you with inveterate pain. Holy shit. You shouldn't wait. That's one thing people don't know about back injuries where you got herniated discs. Anything like that, or you've got something out of alignment. I had bone spurs, so I had major damage from in my cervical. But anyway, that I was taking a polygraph about that because the guy that was with me when I got sucker punched, this guy was behind me, and there was this girl that was trying to flirt with me, and I didn't want nothing to do with her, in truth. And the guy that was with me, who was my subordinate at the time, I was his supervisor, but we were best friends, Daniel J. Finn. He stayed in and was able to retire a master sergeant. Believe me, man, Dan had his troubles, and in Jesus' name, I was blessed to give him another chance in a DWI. On base, he hit a guy, and saying he had troubles, but I knew that Dan, would settle down, and he would do well. I knew it, so of course. Anyway, Dan. This is Dan, who I was best friends with, and I had been, the reason why he was able to stay in the military and then retire. In truth. Anyway, why I bring that up is I needed a buddy letter that would have told what happened, at that bar in Oklahoma City when I got sucker punched by this guy, and Dan, as many times I tried tracking him down, he was always in trouble. Like he got involved with some crap when he got out of the military, like so many veterans do. And he was a drug addict. He lost his family and everything. And I had got to talk to him for a minute in between court and a halfway house kind of situation that he was put into. And then I couldn't get a hold of him, but damn, I needed it from him like right now, yesterday, when he disappeared into whatever situation that the court had him in. I couldn't get a hold of him, and I contacted his ex-wife, his son, his daughter, his son I don't know, but his daughter, yes. Can't remember her name. She had such a unique name. Anyway, they couldn't get a hold of him, or they weren't telling me the whole story. I don't know. But there he was, man. It's like, damn. The sucker punch led to my neck being so injured that, I suffered with it for years, man. And then, then I had to have it fused. I should have had it fused early on, man. It was so brutal. So brutal. I was wearing a neck brace before I got the surgery. That's how brutal it was. And I had to set up everything like ergonomic minded, so that I never had my chin down. My chin, when it would drop a little bit, man, and I would go into spasm. It was just so bad of an injury. Mangled. Even now, after having my neck fused, the last time it was looked at, they're like, your neck is jacked. I'm like, yeah, no shit. It sucks, man. It's still something bad. When like sleeping, I have to have a combination of pillows that I use, and they don't work for the whole. Like if I were able to get a night's sleep, well, the pillows, I can only sleep for a certain amount of time before my left arm, because if I'm on my left side, the way it works, my head going down, however it is in the pillow, it'll be the left side. Whatever side that I'm sleeping on, that side where my neck has turned, or whatever, how it turns when you lay in that position, that side will go totally. Now, when I'm on my left, both go. Now that I'm thinking about it. On my right, it's pretty much the left, but so I got one side that's worse than the other. But so anyway, why do I bring all of this up? Yeah, that's a lot to talk about. Well, okay. I was talking about I served honorably with distinction and and I mentioned about the what happened when I was the adrenaline hit going through Army boot camp. I was in the Army National Guard. You see, after going through that, knowing that I was injected with something, because when I went to the individual active training at Fort Gordon, Georgia, AIT, I was put in this bay where there were 7 other guys. There were 8 in this bay. That's how it was, that's how it was made. The barracks that I went to boot camp at Fort Jackson, they were the World War II barracks. And it was amazing. My uncle, Bob Svetlik, Uncle Bobby, he went through the same barrack that I did when he went to Vietnam. He went through the same barrack. I'm not talking about the row of barracks, the barrack. We went through the same barrack. That's amazing, isn't it? My Uncle Bob, he died from exposure to Agent Orange, a landing strip that was freshly dosed with it. He flew in, and just from that dense exposure, it led to him having like really bad bone cancer, and he had it for years. My Uncle Bob. Anyway, those barracks, I wanted, it's funny, but those barracks, they tore those barracks out as soon as our cycle was done, which I thought was interesting. The timing. We were literally the last cycle. I think it had, of course, something to do with what they had done with that experiment, or not experiment, but well, it isn't whatever the trial, the virus, trial, whatever the hell type of viruses. Mine was flagged when I did get a blood test there in Bayonne. It was a Dr. Mutter Pearl when my wife had health insurance there for a minute, and I was with her on the plan for Greater New York Insurance. Dr. Mutter Pearl did a blood test, and it was flagged as a retrovirus. And he's like, "What's this about?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, I know it's gonna sound hard to believe, because it's like I had told a few people. I got the same kind of fucking, like, looked at me like I was I'm gonna pull a tinfoil hat out of my pocket and put it on. Well, I talked to them, told them what had happened, what happened going through boot camp. Anyway, yeah, it's hard to, over the years, I told my unit, my NCOIC, when I got back, and then I was encouraged to talk to our commander, and somehow, man, I never made it there with the, I never talked to. Yeah, I did. I started to. That's right. I went into it. I felt it out. The situation, when I spoke to him about it, I felt like maybe I shouldn't have even said anything. I felt like that. There I am, talking to him. Vaguely, I remember. But I get the same kind of reaction. People didn't want to hear it, and if I mean, whew, shit, But when I went to AIT right after boot camp, they put me in this bay with 7 other guys. Only one of them could speak English. The rest of them couldn't even speak English. They spoke Spanish. I don't know where the hell they were from. I don't know. I thought maybe they were there at the time as part of some kind of agreement that they had made for their citizenship. I saw that, with a mercenary, who ended up being our platoon guide. He was as part of the part of the agreement. He had to go through boot camp again just to get his citizenship. Anyway, this is something different with these guys. I don't know if they were from Puerto Rico or what the deal. Where were they from? South America? I don't know. At the time, I couldn't tell. Look, I was really sick. Let me tell you. Well, that bay, with only one other guy that could speak English, it came down to everyone was gone but him. It was that contagious what I had, and then he was gone, and I was left alone. And look, this is going to sound really wild. I don't remember one day of training at Fort Gordon. Doop 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 doop. Don't remember a day. The illness that's from that, what the manifestation of what that retrovirus did to me with a brain fog, which I'm sure we're talking about an engineered virus. I had this brain fog, man. I couldn't remember. I don't remember anything from my training. I could tell you all about my training, though, at Fort Jackson. The advanced stages. Sorry, my teeth. As a disabled veteran, I've been suffering with dental problems for many years. You can't even get an antibiotic for a bodily infection from a tooth. You have to have a 100% rating with the VA, disabled rating, 100%, or you cannot. Their policy is nothing. They won't even give you an antibiotic for an infection. So Anyway, sometimes you can hear it in my speech. I'm down to just a few teeth left, and I'm trying my best to nurse the few that are left that are rotting, that I'm literally washing my mouth out with peroxide throughout the day. Just trying to hold on, because I know that when they're pulled, I'd rather get a post in there. Where they are, there's there's three. There's two that are rotting, serious rot right now. Maybe three. Anyway, it's bad. Didn't mean to go off too far in the tangent thinking about that. Excuse me. Yeah, this is like it isn't like I just stumbled off the trail. It's like I was in a loaded truck, with all my worldly possessions in it, and I went off a mountain. That's what I feel like right now, getting back. What the hell was I even talking about? Oh, good Lord. What a ramble session. This extemporaneous mode here. Tonight is a challenge. But, so anyway, yeah, that retrovirus, man, it kicked my ass, many times over the years. It's been 43 years ago that I was given that. And, the thing about you think, well, I don't know, it's not hard to figure out, really, is it? National Guardsmen, I can't speak to, I don't know, I can't, I can tell you there were other guardsmen because, good Lord, Cool Breeze, what was his name? Excuse me a second. I kid you not, I had to go ahead and put on pause and think back. His name was Eric Jones. I was friends with Eric. So I had one guy that I was really close friends with, going through Army boot camp. Eric Jones. He was a guardsman from Scranton, PA. So he was a black dude, and he was pretty cool. I liked him. I remember practically everybody, but, he's the only one that I remember his name, Eric Jones. So how sick was Eric? I don't know. You see, that what I think was one of the determining factors, and I don't know about Eric what his status was. I told you I quit school and went away for training, Army boot and AIT. So I think that was how they determined who the test subjects were. That was one of the determining factors. Eric, I don't know if he was a high school dropout or not. He might have been. The guys that they chose, similar kind of situation where maybe it's been determined that that person is worth less or worth less than others. So, that's how it was determined. So interestingly enough, when I decided to go full on active, because of the Guard, you're a weekend warrior, and I was in long enough that how I served with distinction in the Guard is I was made guide on. That was right before I went active duty, Air Force. So I didn't want the Army, man, after what the hell they injected me with, and so I wasn't too crazy about that, and I didn't know what that would mean later in my life, like how that would affect. No shit. As of late, it's been a real godsend. Ivermectin. Wow. That was something that my wife and we were able to use when we had COVID twice. And, it was tough to talk my wife into it, but we're talking about the veterinary, ivermectin. I was familiar with it because I was raised on a small farm, and my mother had horses. And we would use the ivermectin, especially for the horses. I don't know what, my dad, early on when I was younger, he was full on trying to make it as a farmer. He wanted to be able to make a living as a farmer. And during the 1980s, really, the 70s and then 80s, we've been the 70s and then 80s, because I was born in 65. That's when my dad was trying to make it as a farmer, through that time, through like 60. When he first started getting some money working at, I think he worked at B&W, steel mill first, and then he got a job at Medusa. He was able to get some money. Whereas, right away, it's like he started to finance, tractors. He had a couple, I don't know how many tractors. I think he had 2 tractors, though. And he had various equipment, for farming, like the machines used, plow and discs. And I don't know what else. I think he had a combine. Maybe a manure spreader. I'm pretty sure. We had a small farm, so he had, I don't know how many hogs and how many, steers. And his brother, was connected to a family. He married a Joanne Scotcheloss, who their family were big time farmers. So my dad was able to get a lot of help from my Uncle Davy, I'm pretty sure. But during the 80s is when big farms killed little farms. It was like, predatory. When the industrial, the corporations took a vested interest in farming, to such an point, to such an extent, whereas they then took it over, where a small time farmer was taken out. Pretty much. The reason why small time farmers have been able to make it as of late are because of the organic, farming. Whereas, they got a niche. I think that's what, Niche, right? Sorry, I'm having trouble pronouncing that word. Anyway, interesting. So, I was familiar with ivermectin because we used it on our livestock. We just had a few, but then horses. My dad knew that my mother just loved having horses, man, and so when when he failed with the farming, he didn't really fail though. You know what I'm saying? With what was done, he was squeezed out. It was too hard for a working kind of farmer. That if he would have been a stratum a little bit higher, making a little bit more money that he could invest, and things could have been if he'd have been up another tier, he might have made it up another tier. But I think Dad did go through some tears, and my mother, and so he had to go ahead and suck it up, and he tried a lot of things. As I was growing up, he was trying to break out. He was a jeweler for a while. He turquoise and obsidian, jade, silver. He loved making jewelry, and he might have made it, man. Shit. It's kind of hard to break into something like that. Dad didn't know anybody, so whatever he would design, create jewelry, he had nobody that was marketing for him or helping him. He had no one that was managing him. He didn't know that he was thinking more like artisan and not artist, maybe, but he needed to have representation, and then he could have maybe made it. I don't know. He could have. I was a kid. I didn't understand his talent, and I was kind of selfish with my talents as an artist. And Mom, she had her talents too, and I was, Mom, though, she was more aligned with what with what it is that I do and I've done, what I did. I'm saying I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, Dad different. He probably would have been a good sculptor as well. My dad, but Dad tried some other things too. He really wanted to break out from what he did, and he made good money, but it was like, I guess he really hated what he did to make a living. He didn't want me to have any part of it. My cousin was able to get work over one summer when he was going to Case Western University in Ohio. Funny, I remember the university he went to. But was it jealousy? I don't know. Happy for him in Christ, in Jesus' name, today. Then probably more jealous. Anyway, that's my Uncle Davy's son, Michael. Uncle Davy, who helped my dad so much, who I loved so much. That guy, when he passed away, I got news of it, and I was working at Cedar Point. And I excelled there. I did well at Cedar Point. I'm not bragging, but I was like up to a 3-line blue tag. I was looked at as potential. We're keeping this guy. Like I was there. The manager, the kitchen manager, who was run several areas in the park at Cedar Point there in Sandusky. He had enough pull. He could have made the way for me. I mean, it's a lot of backbiting in anywhere you go. It seems, and there was competition for those jobs, crazy, and but I was in there like swimwear. Yeah, but I decided I chose another path. That job was just physically, with my, with the situation with my lumbar and cervical spine, the injuries that I had, and knowing that I was going to have to, it's like everything I would do, it's like, yeah, you want to stay in shape, but if you do anything that exacerbates, the discs in any way, if you have to do there's certain things I would do that would cause everything to go wacky, where I would hardly be able to walk and all that shit, be down, or my neck would be so stiff I couldn't turn my head without turning my body. But all that, I'd have to be conscious of, like, real monitoring myself, like what you're doing, and if I do that, I'm fucked. If I do that, if I bend in that way, if I lift that, I'm fucked. If I, that's just how it was. If I carry that, just everything you could see. If I have to sit there or stand there and hold my head like that, like if it's a short order cook, you're always having to look down. Look, I'm just saying, ergonomically, I'd have to be conscious of things all the time, so that I wouldn't end up, getting a serious setback. Anyway, interesting, isn't it? Interesting. But I was super healthy at that time. Real healthy. And I had to be. The mentality. That I've got to keep moving, and I've got to keep doing everything I can. Like, keep going, man. And I knew that if I had too much downtime, I was going to be in trouble. So I try my best to monitor what it is I'm doing all the time, so I don't end up being suffering through a bad one. Now, it's like when you're young, shit, you can take a pretty bad, if you get to the point where there's a night where you lay down with an ice pack after like you're doing hot and cold and shit, and you can't go too hot because they'll lock up and shit like that. But using a lot of ice packs and whatever suggestions people would have, you learn about every home remedy. And like alcohol, I knew this guy that would soak towels with alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and he would put that on his lower back, fold the towel, but this guy looked like he looked really sickly. I could tell that the alcohol was really affecting him. He was like almost as white as that translucent look of an alcohol bottle, the white kind of translucent. That's why he was so white, man. I didn't know, I've never met anybody as white as him, and it was probably from the alcohol. Anyway, yeah, it would give you relief, but it's like he was using it like all the time. Anyway, wow, holy shit. Yeah, I mean, it's like in Jesus' name, as I reflect on these things, I can see why I'm still alive in Jesus' name. Yah had caused to become that I had to really always be thinking about having something in reserve. Whereas I was in such good shape that I could take a hard hit from an illness, and I knew that I would be okay. My stamina, and I'm saying, and everything, my strength, and now it's apparent that I am lacking so much. My health has really gone down, not being able to be active, especially from needing the hip replacement surgery. But so I'm still, I'm trying to move, man, as best I can. Like shit, I'm on crutches right now as I speak. I'm like leaning into these crutches, taking the weight. See, if I were to react to the pain, I'm grinding it, man. It's that bad all the time. But I'm leaning into, I'm like on one leg, this wasn't my bad leg, my right leg. I had to have knee surgery on years ago, and I rehabbed. This is the way that I was able to get into freshwater Lake Lanier, when we first moved to Georgia. And I spent a lot of time floating out on when I say a lot of time, I put on buoyancy gear, a belt, and with redundancy, so I wouldn't be in any danger. I'd stay out on the water for 4 to 6 hours at a time, and I'd have and I learned to put weights on my ankles to provide traction, to pull I loose, so that my joints could get fluid in there and function without any problems. So I was able to in Jesus' name, by spiration, develop the system that I'll tell you, man, if I were able to fabricate what it is, produce in a way that could be mass produced, so that you could sell them. What I learned probably could make me a fortune. I developed the whole system with buoyant dumbbells and an oar. This oar that I was able to design by spiration. It in itself could be sold as a whole sport could be built, made around it. It is that good of an oar. The whole concept and the development, where it even is right now, it's not far from, it could go right up and there would be a sport that would be created around it, competitions and everything. It would really take off. I say that, I don't have to be self-deprecating, when you're confident about something, and certainly that's true. Anyway, so my bad leg is my good leg. That right leg is my strong leg, man. Hallelujah, in Jesus' name. I can't, my left side, because of the hip is so bad in the left. I sound like Trump. Sorry, Mr. President. Sometimes you just really brag, or you just make everything larger than life. But I was told that by the folks that looked at my X-ray and MRI of my left hip, that I was told by how many people? Well, several people, that it's the worst that they'd ever seen. The worst. So I mean, the only thing I have really as an accomplishment to look forward to is I can have that title. Like I know that I can maybe get a copy made of the X-ray and MRI and frame it, and I could say, look, and I could show somebody, like, look, they told me it was the worst that they'd ever seen. My hip that bad. So then I could show them how bad it was. And that's my accomplishment out of all of this. So, yeah. Anyway, interesting, right? Yeah, I want to go ahead. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to see about getting that picture taken again. It's been a while since they did an image. So I am interested in seeing where it is now. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, my lumbar spine. How I got injured with my lumbar, the neck. As I told you, I was with Dan Finn, and we were in Oklahoma City. We were just out, like for an excursion, get out for a night. That's all it was, and had to be at work. Report for duty the next morning. What was it, 7:30? And we were in Oklahoma City. 2.5 hours, I think, from Altus, where we were stationed, Altus Air Force Base. Good Lord. That night, after that guy freaking sucker punched me, because when that guy sucker punched me, Dan was sitting across from me, the music's playing, the dancer. I honestly, I tell you now, I have no reason to lie about this. I was not interested in this girl, in her at all. I was just being nice. She came over to the table, the music's loud. She'd been dancing out in this little stage area, and out there behind the bar. They had a few tables sitting in between the bar. There was the one table, two tables there. And then there were some tables against the wall, because it was like a narrow kind of rectangle shaped bar, and where the girls might dance. This one girl was back there, she had been dancing. It was like on the side where the bar was when you came in, on the left, and you walked back, and she was. I'm trying to, anyway, this is a little stage area. But she had come over and was talking to me. I didn't want nothing to do with her. I mean, when I tell you nothing, I didn't want anything at all to do with, this was like right in between, like I'm going through this divorce and everything with what happened to me in the service, the Air Force, with this whole mess with my unit, my detachment, and they were very prejudiced, and I was married to a black girl. She was a service member, and I had a very prejudiced NCOIC, who then became our first shirt, of our detachment. But anyway, this was a black girl, this dancer, that came up and trying to talk to me, and I didn't want anything to do with her, man. When I say that, yes, I mean I had no design thinking about her. There was nothing. And Dan is sitting like across from me, but counter, like a little bit staggered, but like against the wall of the outside wall of the the bar. It's like a rectangle. He's on the side, and the bar is on the other side. This is like maybe 1/4 of the way or 1/3 of the way into the bar where our table was. He's trying to get my attention. Music's playing. I can't understand what he's trying to say. This dancer standing in between us, but to the left. And the guy, she was trying to talk to me, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not interested in her. I'm just being nice to her, being decent. Dan is, now he's gesticulating, trying to point something behind me. And then I went to turn my head, and I turned however I was turning, and all I saw was this contorted face. And then he connected. And when he connected like in the small, between my jaw and my what the hell is that called? Collarbone. From my jaw and my collarbone, in that small area. He caught me in the neck. He didn't connect the jaw. He hit me like right in the neck, right in my spine. And I wasn't expecting it, and so I was relaxed. He jacked me. How hard he hit me, it was like cartoonish, because I went off the chair and I slid on the floor towards where the girls would dance. That's a good lyric, huh? That's how I went down. And I slid. And I don't remember there being any sawdust on the floor. I don't remember there being sawdust, but I slid like there was. I don't know if it was just dirty or what. But when he hit me, what I experienced was this, immediately I had tunnel vision. I might have blacked out, and then I was coming back through the tunnel. And it was the circle. This, I've blacked out before, but this is the first time I ever experienced anything like that with tunnel vision. And I was amazed by it. I'm like, holy shit, that's amazing. I'm thinking about that as this guy is charging me. Now, when I had my mind withal that I knew this guy was charging me. In Jesus' name. It's amazing, isn't it? What is compressed in time? The compression of it all. How much information. I remember being amazed by the tunnel vision. Asking myself, did I black all the way out? I asked myself that question. I didn't feel like I had lost consciousness. But I had this tunnel vision. That's why it amazed me. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And I was on the floor. Yes. And I could feel I could feel him charging on me more than anything. Seeing him, I didn't have to see him. But when I jumped to my feet and I knew that I had to act like I was okay. Or he would have gotten on top of me. And, you know, by the reaction that my friend Dan had, he was the only one that would have been for me, you know. And you know what he did? You know what I remember out of those compressed moments? I looked at him, and when that guy hit me, and I don't know if it was like, it felt like I was even sliding, and you know, I mean, in that compressed moment, I saw Dan with his beer bottle, black beer bottle. I don't know if it was Budweiser. I think it might have been, but it was a dark glass, you know, bottle, and he is getting ready to smash it. I knew his intention was to smash it. That's the next thing he was going to do. I recognized that he was deciding whether or not to smash the bottle. And I was like thinking, I just thought, did enter my mind quick. I'm like, what the fuck? He ain't moving to help me. He's worried about himself. Entirely. There wasn't no rush to come and get to help me. I saw and I recognized and I felt, I knew his intention with the bottle. He was going to break it. He was making that decision, should I break the bottle? To protect himself. There was no thought of me. And I recognized that. In Jesus' name, Yah caused to become that I knew he wasn't for me. But I got to my feet, and this guy, man, he was like, then I recognized how fucking stupid he was. Like a Mongo. Like his intelligence. I read his intelligence. I knew where he was. And I was like, I'm saying to myself, you stupid fuck. You fucking idiot. Because I hadn't done anything. I wasn't coming on to, that girl, if he liked her, or a dancer, whatever. I'm like, you stupid fuck. That's what I'm thinking, like screaming. You know, as I am, you know, projecting to him that I am ready to fucking throw down. Let's go. Now you fucking did it. Let's go. You know what I mean? Instantly, I'm projecting that. But I'm projecting like, let's go, man. I'm ready. Don't think you fucking hurt me. Like, I'm projecting this. Like, you want it. I'm here. Here it goes. You know what I mean? I don't want to make it sound like it was more than that. It was just enough of what I needed to project that it was enough to fucking get him to second guess himself. He wasn't confident enough to fucking even come after me in a fucking maybe. You know, he hit me with everything he had and he knew it. And I fucking slid on my ass on the floor. He hit me so fucking hard, and I weighed like 185 pounds. And I slid on the floor from the strike. He was a bigger guy than me. Try to picture it. And I'm telling the truth. He was a big fucking retard. Fucking retard. You know, what else can I say? The guy was... He's a fucking stereotypical fucking like guy, you know, the fucking you don't want to fucking run into. And I fucking ran into him. Oh my God. So when he saw, you know, being the coward that he really was, that he would, you know, when I projected that he thought that I would be you know, something that would be a challenge for him. I don't know what the fuck he thought, because I didn't project that into his mind. You know, I was just projecting, buddy, I'm in it. Don't think that you fucking got me. I'll fight you. Fuck, I'm ready. Whereas really, I was like, fuck, somebody help me. You know, fucking, somebody else would have fucking, I don't know, maybe an ambulance. It was so bad. I'm like, oh my God, as we're driving home, I had to fucking drive. That's another thing. I looked over at Dan. I'm like, he knows I just took a fucking wallop and he's not even offering to fucking drive. And I had to open the door and keep my eye on the fucking line on the middle of the road because the fog was so fucking thick. The fog. Oh my God. You probably wonder what the fuck is he talking about. The fog, man, was so bad. Oh my God, how long it took us to get from Oklahoma City to Altus, A-L-T-U-S. Look it up. You'll see. It's about as far away from other places that it should be a remote assignment. Yeah. But, you know, I was there a few years. And it did grow on me. There are things about Altus that I really thought were really cool. Quartz Mountain. They had a mountain range there that was made out of quartz, much of it. And it was just so beautiful. A spectacle. Because there it was. Like it just jumped, you know, whatever, you just popped up out of nowhere. You know, you're out there and everywhere you look around you is like tumbleweed conditions where that's what you're looking for, is tumbleweeds to, you know, roll by. That's what it looks like. And here's this mountain range that is small enough that you can see, you know, it's like it's in the middle of nowhere. And that's like just being on the ground and seeing where it is. It really is cool. They had an irrigation system from that as well, from the reservoir there, 20 miles away. And they had this, man, I could have really made use of that, but you know, that would have been fun to float the whole of that. You know, they had a game reserve there. I was able to hunt, and I harvested a Boone and Crockett, a minimum Boone and Crockett. We're talking a typical 170, 172 or 173, whatever it is. Green. It made it green into the Boone and Crockett. I don't know. I didn't register it, but I could have registered it. It made the minimum requirement. What a beautiful rack. It was when you're a hunter, there is, I don't know, it seems like I knew a lot of people that were of a like mind. But maybe I was, you know, I don't know. I thought that everyone, you know, as you talk about this, you know, you want to get this trophy buck. And some people, you know, you think that that's all they're interested in, and they end up, you know, being off going to hunts, you know, all over the world. And it's just, you know, but that took it out of me for years. I didn't even want to hunt until I realized the real benefit to eating a free-ranging creature like a deer. You know, their diet, what God has given them, instincts to eat, you know, to stay healthy. Well, a free-ranging creature, man, there's no comparison with, you know, to, you know, a corral raised steer. You know, where you have a diet, you know, that's constricted. It may look like it's got everything they need on paper, but the way that a free-ranging creature, the way that think about it, you know, the way that they process, you know, whatever it is that they take in with vitamins, minerals, and then you've got all these different plants and trees where leaves. There's all their diet. Should they know what to eat, what they can't eat? What I'm saying, and they have instincts to what keeps them healthy. You know, of how God has given them that appetite. That whatever it is that they may be eating that's good for them, that they're not getting, as a beef that are raised in, controlled climate or corral or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Even grass-fed beef is not the same as a free-ranging, of course, creature that's covering, miles of forest, woods, fields where there's wild, the different plants that grow, trees and what have you. But the deer are able to, they look at it. When you see a healthy deer, man, out in the wild, it's miraculous, amazing. You're like, wow, the health. And God's given it the instincts to what it is that they need to do to be at peak, their health to be that good. It's amazing, man. I'm always amazed at that. When you see it and you recognize what I'm talking about, it's really just amazing. Like, wow. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I got off and talking about the ride back from Oklahoma City to Altus. Dan and I we had to report for duty at 7:30, 7 o'clock, whatever it was. I think 7:30. Isn't it something I don't remember? It's not that my unit was lackadaisical, laxed, whatever the word is. Is that right? It's not that. It's just for me, I never thought about time. I was never time oriented. I was work oriented, duty oriented. My job, I'd never think, about too much. I talk about Quartz Mountain, I had some excursions. But they were few and far between. My job was first, my duty, and that's why, I was recognized as being the best that the United States Air Force had. And I was awarded for that, and it's wild, man. I'm telling you, I was at the pinnacle of where I could have been as an enlisted man. There were orders that were being cut from my headquarters at Lackland Air Force Base, where my squadron was, the 1365th Audiovisual Squadron at Lackland. That's where my command was. But I was I was in Detachment 4, the 4th detachment from that squadron at Altus Air Force Base. I was waiting for orders that were being cut, I was told, by my supervisor, Sharon Gardner, Sergeant Gardner, and then also echoed by my detachment chief. That would be Sergeant Taylor, Stephen Taylor, Master Sergeant, Senior Master Sergeant, Stephen Taylor. But I was waiting for orders that were being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon in honor of that, being recognized and being awarded as the best that the United States Air Force had in my AFSC. I was then, I didn't even have to go to NCO school. I was fast-tracked. That's when you look at my records, that should wake you up. You know, nobody, everyone has to go to NCO school, but I didn't have to. They fast-tracked me. Isn't that cool? Tell people they think I'm making it up. My records would bear that out. That's what's interesting about records. You know, you've got different sets of records when you're in a detachment. You've got the records at your command at Lackland, and then you got records from the base that you were assigned to, detached to from your unit. So there I was, different set of records. If you look at them, you'll see, everything that isn't like they're on the same page, right? There's a record of everything. It's different. So if the records are ever messed with, fabricated, backdated, that kind of thing, well, there are other records that if they're at a different base, well, they're probably not going to get together and cross their T's and dot their I's together. You know what I mean? You wouldn't think so. I don't think they did. So anything I talk about with the Air Force, see, I told you about the secret virus program, and yes, that's something that was done to me. That should be something you think, well, hell, man. Yeah, with a Trump kind of attorney, Mr. President, if you were listening, if I had one of your attorneys, that probably could be a lawsuit for $100 million. And it would be, what's it called when people come together in a lawsuit? Class action suit? Wow. So you track down the guardsmen, you find out who's around, you get all their testimony, and I don't know, how often was that done? Was it something that they did several cycles that year, or maybe it's something that they did for years? Was it a one and done? I don't know. But what kind of compensation would you give somebody if they are injected with an engineered virus and used as a test subject? A test subject, it doesn't cost them anything. You think, if you're a guardsman, you go back to your unit, there's no health care. At least there wasn't in the 80s, when I served, so. There was, if you get sick, you go back to your unit, and they just monitor what happens to you from a distance. And they can know. Okay, they know then the specifics of whatever pathogen and what then happened. They can, they know where the person, like what they can know something about the person, whatever, basic information. Hey, man, look, I don't know, except I do know this. There probably is a statistician out there somewhere that is handling a contract to monitor, still monitoring, the kids that were injected with these fucking pathogens. Oh God, it's just like every time I would bring this up, talk to anybody about this, you feel like, it's like so taboo that they make you feel fucking like something's wrong with you. Telling them, giving them testimony. Oh my God. What's wild about this retrovirus is I've been with my wife now, Nursiva, 35 years. And how many times this has reared its head, where I've got, my system's been weakened, and I, had to, fight it to, get it put back in its place where my body's strong enough to keep it at bay. How many times? that was done throughout the years. How many bouts I had. Oh my God. You know, I start thinking about all the medications and all the different, oh my God, each one of them is, you know, there's some of those challenges that were just, I remember so much about going through where I'd have to lift my arms up and hold on to a door frame above my head just to breathe. You know, that bad. How the fuck? So bad. I was so sick. And my wife never got it. No contagion, man. It's like whatever it was they fucking designed and would fucking shot me up with. It did have a contagion time. Like when they had me in that bay at AIT. And 8 of us in the bay. And they caught that shit off of me. And it got down to the last guy, the guy that could speak English. The only guy that could speak English. And I know I was like, I'm like, I knew he was going to be going within a couple days. And then he was gone. And my memory from the time, that's the only thing I remember, is that, and there was this other kid, other guy, this little dude that could barely speak English, and he was showing off in front of his friends, trying to pick a fight with me. We were all alone. I was the only, besides the other guy that spoke English. They were all, I think purposely, they were just like the same as me. Like I was a high school dropout, which is one of the things that made it interesting for them to choose me. You know, somebody that's worth less than somebody that does graduate from high school. And so I was in that category. Hey, I wanted to, I don't think I said this earlier, when I decided to go in the Air Force, they wouldn't take me with a GED. So I had to get my diploma. And when I contacted my high school, I found out that I either was 4 or 6. Do you know, I can't remember. I think it was only 4, though, credits I needed to graduate. So, you know, I graduated the same year as if I would have been with my graduating class. It doesn't look any different than that when you just look at my records. But I had quit school. But you know, I'm a high school graduate. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Interesting. I am so tired. But what happened to me in the Air Force? You know, the lumbar, I told you about the cervical injury to my neck. I don't remember ever getting, you know, any time or anything off from my injuries. I was leaning over tables and shit to do my work. I was so fucked up, banged up, that, I mean, we're talking about injuries that led to my having to have 2 spinal fusions. And I wasn't given any mercy. That's just how my unit was, man. Just a bunch of fucking backbiting. I don't know, they made it sometimes pretty miserable. It's like that, man. People can be so fucking jealous, you know, about the jealousy involved. I worked hard for what I accomplished. You know, to be recognized as the best that the Air Force had at that time in my job. I was awarded being the best, and to be waiting on orders that were being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon in honor of that. Right then and there, a congressional inquiry that I had been wondering, when is this gonna fucking hatch? My aunt had spoken to her congressman in District 17, where I live now too. But I talked to my aunt about this matter with my NCOIC, Stanley Beauchamp. I can't remember his middle name. Stanley L. Beauchamp. Yeah, whatever. But Sergeant Beauchamp, this black guy that, if I would have been in Christ at the time, it would have been an excellent opportunity. But I wasn't. And he made my life miserable. So much so that I'm not going to revisit it here. I don't want to do that. I touched upon some areas just, that you have to be careful. Because that sense of memory can really, well, let's just put it this way. You listen to a song that reminds you of a time in your life. That's sense memory. How many times have you listened to a song and it's made you happy? Or made you really sad? And it can set the tone for your whole day or even your whole week. So, that's why we put together playlists, don't we? Songs that, help us when we're working out or when we want to relax. Whatever it is, we can it makes it easier using sense memory, right? And the music. Oh, good Lord. Yeah, I don't want to think about what exactly Stanley Beauchamp. I went to the base social actions about him. See, I was dating and then I married Sherelle Turner. She was an Air Force member, worked at the hospital squadron. And Beauchamp, he made my life just pretty miserable enough that I went to base social actions about him. And then I got there and Captain Ayers was the person I spoke to. He's the CO of base, meaning Elsis Air Force Base. The social actions unit was under their command, the base. All these things, I was just naive and I didn't think before, I acted, which, I shouldn't have said anything to my aunt. She said, Jimmy, I know my congressman, I'll talk to him for you. Of course, my aunt, she didn't make it sound like she was best friends with this guy, but that she knew him, yeah, he'll help you. She was so wrong. Anyway, Captain Ayers was a black guy. I learned real quick that social actions is really for blacks. Me being a Polish, Dutch, German, Irish, and American Indian, you probably can't tell, but Eurocentric looking person, whatever, with a complaint about an African American to a CO that is like Malcolm X's I was going to say is, what's it called when you train up somebody? Apprentice. I don't know. Look, look, all I know is how Captain Ayers treated me. And man, he wasn't for me. And I was like, oh my God. I was just trying to explain. I'm like, I told him, I'm like, what the hell it was and how bad this guy was and how prejudiced and fucking made my life miserable and was putting a lot of stress on my wife and I's marriage because he knew people from her squadron at the hospital. So anyway, truly, everything I'm telling you is all true. So I got back to my detachment, and guess who is waiting to talk to me there? Sergeant Beauchamp, the guy that I went to base those reactions with the complaint. And I'm going to let you hear what he sounded like, but look, he just left such an impression. But I of all the people I've known throughout my life, he's the only one that to this day I'll go ahead and do my impression of him. The only person I ever did this with. He said to me, I can't tell you in verbatim, but I have to paraphrase him. Let me take a little drink here before I do this. Let me give it a shot. So I walk in, and there he is, and he's like, "Hey, Makosha, I just got off the phone with Captain Ayers. Him and I, I've known Captain Ayers a long time. We've been friends a long time. He said you were over there saying bad things about me." That's what Beauchamp said to me. Beauchamp was from Kentucky. He had a strong accent, and I didn't do a very good job with it at that time. Anyway, it's lackluster through the years. Anyway, I was like, wow, man, excuse me for the use of the epithet. Epithet? Fuck it. Wow, that I knew I had fucked up. Oh my God, how could I have been so stupid? And I'm like, man, am I a fucking retard or what? It's like, what the fuck? I'm that dumb? What am I doing? Oh my God. It's like, after that happened, I talked to my aunt, and I could feel like I was in trouble. Like this guy could end up hurting me, ruining me, ruining my career in the Air Force, and I knew I was in trouble. What am I gonna do? I talked to my aunt. I told her, and my Aunt Omi was her one flaw that I think was crippling for her, is that for those that she loves, she would fight. She would fight for them. Fight! When I say that was something that is a flaw, well, damn, I knew that when I talked to my aunt, that she'd want to fucking fight, and that she would have that attitude. I knew she would carry through, and she'd help me. And I can tell you, I repent that I did that. I got to see it later on. Of course, I recognized it. Then I'd see my family members, how they would get her to fight for them. And I felt really bad about it. I apologized to my aunt. I loved her dearly. And this one ended up really biting me in the ass, though, because she talked to her congressman, and then I don't know what to expect. I'm just like an ignoramus about these matters. yeah, I shouldn't have done it. Um, how would I have done it today? Look, don't get it twisted. You might hear me using some colorful language, but I am in Christ. I am a work in Christ. And a work, meaning, yeah, I know that, with how complicated and my life has been, and the work, everyone that is a work in Christ is a breathing, walking, talking, breathing miracle. So I'm not going to say that I am more special in any way than anybody, but I know that I'm a work, in Christ. That's what I know. Humbly, I tell you. But then I was a weak believer. What I had learned, being raised as a Catholic. So not a lot of knowledge, but I had a knowing faith, that I should have. I got myself into trouble through the years. I should have drawn near to the living God and been in the pew, somewhere where I could hear well every Sunday, and for the Bible studies on Wednesday evening. I should have been there, singing in the chorus, the choir. Should have been there. Should have done that. But it's interesting, and when I look back on it all, I can see so easily that because I knew that my aunt did talk to her congressman. When she told me she spoke to her congressman, yeah. And then every time I talked to my aunt after that, she's like, "What's going on?" She was expecting, there to be something done. And there wasn't. And the same thing, I'm telling her all the time, nothing. Her name was Leoma. People would call her Omi. To me, she was Aunt O. But I knew something was up too, man. I'm like thinking, what the hell, So that was conducive to my spending even more time on my work. So, I look back on it and I know I started to win a lot of awards, and the jobs that I was getting, the duty was more prestige. And it was pretty cool, man. It's like, and I just kept running with it, man. It's like, boom. And I wasn't trying to hurt anybody either. I was just doing my thing. The competitiveness with me, that, it wasn't really, it was just wanting to I wanted to do my best. And always, the goal is you want, anyone that you do work for, you want that to be the best, the best, absolutely the best. So I worked, I all the time. My work ethic was a total immersion in some things, in truth. So when I was recognized and then awarded my command at Lackland, had chose me to be, the airman of the year, and they were working on my assignment at the Pentagon. And of course, when I was told that, I was like, first thing I'm thinking, man, and this is the truth. The first thing I thought when I was told, it won't be long, I'll be doing work for the president. Of course. That's how I would have played it. It would have been boom. I would have done everything that I could to get that kind of recognition, or I would have been working for the president. I guarantee you. Like with where I was as an airman and my. Yes. Now that's even me talking about the injuries that I had. Those injuries, led to my having to have 2 spinal fusions. So, I still believe that I would have. That's my goal would have been that I'd have got recognized and I'd have been working for the president. That I would have done. I'd have made the most out of that opportunity, believe me. I would have gone as high as I could have gone as an enlisted man. And who knows, my childhood dream of being a warrant officer. Maybe I would have gone after something else as well. It's hard to say. I would have been able to have the best care. I mean, everything would have been so good, man. So, potentially. Oh, man. Standing there when I was told, when Sergeant Gardner filled me in and her little sidekick, Karen, whatever her name was, she's standing there, and they are just excited as hell just to tell me, about me being recognized and awarded as being the best at the command, in our command, and that they were cutting orders for me to serve at the Pentagon. Man, you don't know. That's like rock star status, Yeah. Everybody was talking about it. And I had that sobering thought. What the hell is going to happen with this congressman, this congressional? And I don't know if I said anything to Karen Gardner. I think I did. I think I had told her I'd filled her in. She's the only one. I was good friends with her husband. He had taken me into that area that I hunted, and I got that Boone and Crockett. I didn't realize that that's where I came out from, this river that I walked down with a friend and came out on a power line. I didn't realize that, at first, when Sharon's husband, Lynn, he was an avid outdoorsman, hunter, and fisherman, just, anything to do with the forest, the woods, he just loved being out in the woods. Yeah, and I liked him a great deal. Lynn, I got along with really well. Oh, good Lord, but look, I think I did tell Sharon about the fact that I told my aunt about, told her about what had gone down with Beauchamp. Everything was known. Everybody knew how much of an asshole Beauchamp was. And early on, even when I first, got to the unit, he separated me from everybody and had me working in this attic of the building. At first there was someone up there, and then they took them out, and I was alone. And Beauchamp was studying me like I was, like it was a clinical kind of experiment or something. He had some psychology classes. That's it, and people were telling me I was separated from the unit. They're like, yeah, he's an asshole. Don't worry, you'll be all right, and whatever they were saying. But I was getting comfort. And they were telling me, that Beauchamp is an asshole. Don't worry about it. Or let me know. We see what's going on. But even from the beginning, it was weird. The guy was, Anyway, so when Sharon told me that there were orders being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon, I couldn't, like, there it is, my thought is tainted with this. What about this congressional? What is going to happen here with this? So, the time, like, what are we talking about here? Excuse me. The time from when I was told that it's the 1365th, our command at Lackland. That's where they were cutting the order to get any orders cut from my command. From that time that I was told, and I can remember right where I was, in the building. Everything in that moment when I was told that there were orders being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon. It was like I was dazed. It was amazing. It was an amazing moment. And having that thought too, like, what about this congressional? What's going to happen with that? It was like the ship was ready to sail, but it was still anchored at port. That's what I felt like. But the ship, I'm thinking more like a big sail ship. Big, beautiful sail ship. It's getting ready, man, to sail. Why would it sit at port with the sails all up? Yeah, I know, but this one, maybe it was. And it seemed like it was like the next beat. There are these compositional elements in a performance. They call them beats. It's a separation when something changes with a performance, like a play. The elements in composition for a playwright. They think, some playwrights think of elements. So it's like a beat. The next beat was that there were Airman Dallaire and Airman Bemis. I was in this room called the CompuGraphic room. It's where we got this new computer graphics system. We may have been the first in the Air Force to get our hands on that technology, computer graphics. Ah, man, I was excited about it. It was at its infancy. The sun is starting to rise. It's that time of day already, 4:53. But I was coming out of that CompuGraphic room. Now, I wanted to say this is kind of cool, but because of the type of work that I had the honor of being involved in, assigned to, what duty, it had a lot to do with our unit. This is going to sound crazy, but success, the success. Well, you can see we were moved into this new building, brand new building, and we were able to order to furnish our workplace with whatever we needed. It was really just amazing. Man, we had the best of everything. Everything. We went from working in an area that was something you would think about in some honestly, some rundown World War II workplace. It's, I mean, I don't know where your mind goes for, that thought. But I'm talking about everything is wood and nails. What we moved into, the new building. I was going to say something more than building, because it was so much more than just a building. Because it housed several units within the building. It was like a really modern structure, something that everybody was excited about. Oh man, you were talking about, marble and glass. Everything, being modernized and clean and shiny, beautiful. But that's what we that's what we were working in now, and putting in those, working nights and weekends was all right with me, man. I was like, holy shit, this is great. I mean, I saw it all, man. The future was looking really good. The future. We were chosen. Our command was to receive the first batch of C-17s when it came into action, that aircraft. So I had the honor and privilege of working on the whole project to bring the C-17 in, at Altus Air Force Base. We were going to be training pilots and load masters, and it was going to be the C5, for the Mac. It was a Mac base, but we had SAC there, a refueling wing, and we did have a tactical element there too, but it was a Mac base. And to be the Mac base to receive the C-17, it was really cool. So Colonel Hazeltine, the base commander, I got to work. I had the privilege, as much as an enlisted, this young buck sergeant had the privilege to work, with him, and a lot of brass. Brass and silver and gold. They were all. I got to sit in on some meetings like that. It was pretty cool. And I was talking about the future. I mentioned the future. This is what triggered this thought, this memory. It's like they're trying to decide what they should name the welcome package for the C-17. And I just blurted. It didn't blurt though. I mean, I knew what I was doing. I said, the future is now. And they're like, they all lit up, yeah. Everyone, talking about this oval table with maybe 17, 18, 20 people, maybe, seated, and some people around. All, pretty much, they're all officers, but a couple enlisted. But this is a major project, and bringing this aircraft into action, the C-17. And so then there was this pause. They're waiting for something else. Oh, that's good, but what else you got? And I said, the future is here. And they loved it. That's what the package that whole package, welcome package for the C-17, and it was so cool, man. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not a golfer or nothing, but I was on par, and things were looking good. But I went from that to coming out of that CompuGraphics room. Airman Dallaire and Airman Bemis were standing there, two guys that I worked with. They were in my department, and they stood there and blocked my way for me to easily just walk out of the room. And you know, I knew what was going on. Do you know that I knew as soon as it manifested right there before my, right then and there, I knew what it was. I knew that they were setting me up. And how much trouble, like, you know, I wasn't in any trouble or anything, but I had sensed it. In Jesus' name. And I said to them, kind of like a hard joke, get the fuck out of my way. Yeah. So then on that, they had me removed from the detachment to then be assigned working with prisoners on the base. And in Jesus' name, I was able to read it all. I knew that they were, like how they decided to, they're going to try to make me look like I'm a problem. And I'm thinking, like, what are they going to do? You know, you scrutinize every interaction, and what could they possibly do? I'm thinking, what could they do to make it look like I am a problem? In Jesus' name, I'm letting you know I wasn't one that was in the Word. I was, today I am. But I give all the glory to the Most High God. I was able to read it all as it was happening. I knew it. I'm like, yeah, I know that they're trying to now, they had me working with crews that were like taking when they were remodeling dormitories and taking out old mattresses and shit on the hottest days, you know, in the heat of the day. You know, you're carrying with your face up against these fucking mattresses that people have cummed and shit and pissed and whatever, and, you know, carrying out them hot ass fucking shit, pissy, fucking cum stained fucking, you know, mattresses. You know, humid, fucking hot, miserable fucking days. You're doing that kind of shit. You know, yeah, going from being, understanding that I was recognized and awarded as being the best that the Air Force had in my AFSC, and I'm waiting for orders that are being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon in honor of that. And, you know, here I am. And I'm like, man, wow. Anyway, that went on for how long? Like, they had me working with prisoners, and I wasn't a prisoner. Like picking up cigarette butts at the front gate with them. Like, just whatever they could do to humiliate me. And I mean, to break me down. But that wasn't, you know, that wasn't really, I was raised on a farm,
And there was I had lessons in humility. So how long, I don't know, was I in that situation? Because then I found out that I was assigned to base command. Colonel Hazeltine. Here's the thing that it's really, hear me out on this one. I was told by two different people that Colonel Hazeltine, who was I told by? One was Finn, Daniel Finn. The other one was amongst others that were in my unit. We're having like a private kind of like conversation. What I was told is that Colonel Hazeltine was passed over for Brigadier General. That the congressional inquiry had hurt his promotion. I'm telling you this now, and it sounds like I'm making this shit up, but I'm telling you the truth. So I didn't realize this at the time. Maybe I did, but I don't remember giving it place. I was assigned then to base command. And my last duty at base command, you see, I was assigned to base command, but I was working for all these different units on the base with whatever shitty assignments they had, like the shitty mattress a duty, to hugging the mattresses, pissy cum-stained mattresses from dormitories, carrying them out in the heat of the day. That was a fun one. But that was all under base command because I was assigned to base command. Sorry, I need a drink here. Whoa. Yeah. So my last duty was, let me touch upon something else. There's a lot I could tell. I'm not going to go into any detail. Keep it light, but it's something I just shut that all the way down. How long though I was there, working in the different jobs around base. I want to say 2 months, but it couldn't have been 2 months. No, it was more like I guess a month. I don't know. Feels like a long time. They would call me into my unit, my detachment, and what's it called when they, like, cause they were doing this kind of shit all the time for little things to have me sign off on something, like I didn't even know what the fuck I was signing, but they were working their angle. They had to have me, sorry, the name escapes me, but when you're disqualified on something, there has to be a record of that. Like so they disqualified me and backdated my records. But look, I don't know what all they had, Norsiva, I had that paperwork. It was in my record somewhere, and she read it, and she knows me as well as better than anybody, and she's gonna read that fucking fabricated, backdated bullshit that they had me sign, and they needed me to sign, or they couldn't have discharged me. Hear what I'm telling you. But she read it, and she's gonna fucking question me about something that was fabricated and backdated on that fucking list, that shit that I signed. And it really irritated me. And oh my God. So my last duty in the United States Air Force was this. They had me seated in this wooden chair that I was in an area in base command where nobody walked through. I was not like in the basement. I was on the first floor, and I was in an area where there was no traffic. Nobody came in or out. There was one person in the whole time that I was back there that came through. No, they weren't beating me to force me at attention. This is simply what they told me. This is a direct order. You are to sit at attention. If you disobey this direct order, then we're going to discharge you. But this will discharge you with a dishonorable discharge. I'm telling you this. I don't care if you fucking believe me. Fuck you. If you're listening to this and you don't believe me, fuck you. I wish I could edit that out of there. But that's how I feel. As many times as I've reached out and asked for help about this matter, I'm not that crazy about putting this together now. But yeah. That was enough for me, though, to determine that they weren't going to get me for disobeying a direct order. It sounds like a little matter until you're in the situation and you feel the weight of it. Because of all this shit that went on, because of Beauchamp and others in my unit that were prejudiced, my marriage fell apart. I have to whisper to my wife if she's sleeping. I don't want to hurt her. Norceva's been my wife going on 35 years. But I didn't leave my ex-wife on bad terms. When I say that, I'm saying she got a hold of me 12 years ago. She called me and asked me if I would marry her. I should have said, Sherelle, it's nice to hear from you so long, but I gave her place for a minute, and the next thing I know, I'm talking to her behind my wife's back. And it started just to rip my marriage apart. And my wife was given a spirit of suspicion, which God will do, Yah will do. In Jesus' name, she was given it. She caught me talking to Sherelle late at night. And off the property where we were. What I was doing was adulterous. And I repented of it, and I took some work, to get the rudder back in hand, in Jesus' name. I'm only telling you that because they destroyed, my marriage, what they did, and so there I am. I'm at base command. Nobody is coming for me. I lie to myself, I could convince myself that, there's some congressional aide looking for me. They're going to find me. back here. I mean, that sounds delusional. But what do you tell yourself? You know, well, there were a lot of things that I was, not a lot, you know, there's no way, it was pretty simple. You know, you're not going to get me there where I'm going to disobey a direct order. They needed me to be in agreement with what they had worked out, whatever, a few things that they had wrote about me to justify my being fired. And I went through that divorce, and I know that, money-wise, I was in trouble because my ex-wife, she had been through a divorce, and she was always one step ahead of me. It seemed, she had lived it. So I was overwhelmed with the responsibility all on my shoulders of what we had purchased together. A new car and furniture. It's simple things, but maybe a refrigerator? But those purchases, I got stuck with them. Not all of them, but so much that I couldn't handle it. So I suppose what they settled was on like financial irresponsibility. But I could have gotten help. That's about the only thing. They had fabricated, made up some shit, backdated stuff. Now when you take my records in, lay them side by side with my command at Lackland and whatever other records, the records from the congressional inquiry, whatever they've got there on base command, whatever records. Not everybody's going to be on the same page, are they? So that should be pretty obvious. Where there was some mess around. It's kind of ridiculous, but I haven't touched upon this the way that I should. I gauge it because I don't like to talk about it at all. I was ordered to sit at attention. They had this staff sergeant that knew my wife. I knew this guy by sight. This black dude. He was assigned there. They had a desk set up. They brought in to this area at base command, but in an area where there was no traffic. Nobody came in or out of. So he was sitting there behind a desk that they brought in for him to sit there and watch me to make sure that I stayed seated at attention. That's what he did. That's what he was there for. Assigned to me. When it was that they produced the paper for me to sign, I don't remember. Was it when they first sat me there at attention? Nah. I knew there was something up like that. Yeah, something I sensed. I wasn't surprised when they produced it. And then I knew that what they were doing was entirely, that anybody that would hear that would see, even the evidence, you look at, where I was as an airman being recognized and awarded as, for Airman of the Year in my AFSC, and waiting then for orders that were being cut for me to serve at the Pentagon in honor of that. It's pretty tough to go from that, being someone that, doesn't even have to go to NCO school, jumps that they did that for me. That anybody that sees that alone would say, that's pretty fucking weird. But look, I don't know. I don't know what my records look like, but I think it should be pretty easy. to see that what I've spoken about here is true. The last duty, my being seated at attention, you know, your thoughts may have went real glib, wasn't it? Glib. Like, you don't want to hear about anyone being ordered to sit at attention and having raw injuries to their spine that led to 2 spinal fusions. But that I was ordered to sit at attention and was refused. Like, it wouldn't let me go to the hospital. They wouldn't, I should have just signed the shit from the beginning, I guess, but I don't know. I somehow had fooled myself into thinking that it was the best thing to do. I don't know. Even now, I don't know how did I convince myself to do that? What did I mean, it does sound delusional that I would think that there was a congressional aide from District 17, Pennsylvania, looking for me. But that was in the mix. I was able to make that real enough. And I'm telling you now, and it sounds so dumb. I'm stationed at Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And I've managed to convince myself, being seated at attention in an area at Altus Air Force Base, a base command, an area where no traffic. What the fuck is this? How surreal, even revisiting it all. It feels just like, oh man, wow. But I knew that anyone that's got any sense at all, I tell them, and I won't even have to do much convincing. It's pretty obvious. I knew that, and I don't mean to sound arrogant in that, but I knew that they would have a tough time doing what they were doing. And see, the thought that I had, the secondary thought with that was, in truth, this is the thought: I'm going to have to fight Sharon Gardner. She's complicit now. I think about one time that I was brought in from some detail was I dragging mattresses, hugging piss-stained mattresses at the time when I was called in to be disqualified from a lettering machine. And I was the go-to guy, for a certain type of work, and they disqualified me off of it, and I was the go-to guy that so many would ask for to do those type of jobs, and they disqualified me. But they had to do that. How many times did they do that? Several times. There I am. I'm brought into the detachment, where just it had been a few weeks then, but it was just seemed like yesterday. Everyone was so excited that I was going to be serving as a Pentagon. you know. I mean, I only had, I think, besides Beauchamp, I don't know who, I didn't have any real enemies. He must have hated me. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to go into it. I will say this, though. There was a point when I was seated at attention that I had this moment where I remember saying, that's what it is. I said, that's what it is, that's what it is. When somebody snaps, when something happens, mental, like when something breaks, and you have something that happens, that's that. I mean, I remember saying it and experiencing it, but I can't, it's hard for me to explain it. I remember even laughing. And I think that fucking staff sergeant was assigned to fucking sit there and make sure I sat attention. He asked me, what are you laughing about? Something like that. When I did decide to sign it, here's the kicker. I can't tell you how many days I was seated at attention. I can't tell you, I don't know. But I do know this, that when I agreed to sign what they wanted me to sign, they left me there for 4 more days. And I remember those 4 days. And it was just as fresh, the indignation. Is that the right word? As fresh. The hurt. When I made it to the 4th day after that. You know, the recollection of it was just the same. It hadn't lost any power. It's like hitting, you know, boom. I don't know what else. God. It wears me. You see, I feel like my mouth's all dry. I can't even. I know I hardly said anything. And I feel like I have said it all. But I can't really, I don't want to have to revisit all this shit. So listen, okay, where is this coming from? Look, I was monitored, surveilled. My civil liberties were stomped upon for the sake of Norfolk Southern and those multi-billion-dollar corporations that they were hauling for, and that they illegally burned off at least 34 railroad containers carrying carcinogenic industrial materials. Now, for the sake of those corporations, to keep them from being held accountable for a criminal, multi-billion-dollar man-made, of course, criminal disaster, for the sake of them escaping accountability, they surveilled me. Why? Because I captured the video the irrefutable evidence of not only this shit, these massive carcinogenic fucking particle laden smoke clouds dragging through District 17 at like 2 to 3 miles per hour, dragging through, moving through, going to the east, because that's where the winds all blew. From the east, to the east, from the night of the derailment and those massive fires, the derailment that was on the Pennsylvania border, all the way through this massive illegal burn-off, disposal, so they thought it was going to disperse up in the atmosphere. Even though they were told that by the Honorable Sil Sagano from the Youngstown Fire Department. He went on Channel 27 Youngstown News the night before they did the massive, plume burn off. Everyone knows from East Palestine, that lying narrative where the winds never carried any of that shit to the west, where the disaster was reported on in safety in East Palestine, where the first responders stood to the west in safety, acting like they were trying to put out the fires that they were told to not put out when they arrived there on the 3rd of February 2023. They were told to not put out the fires. Anyway, what am I saying? I was surveilled. My civil liberties were fucking stepped on. I couldn't share this video of the massive fallout. Pennsylvania was kept from everyone's mouth. You can't find one news report where it talks about the fallout of millions of pounds of carcinogenic industrial fucking product that fell out. The Honorable Sil Sagano, I touched upon him. He went on Channel 27 News and he said that the shit was going to attract water molecules. He said the properties of the chemicals involved. He said then they would get heavy and drop, fallout. The videos I capture, they show the fallout. And then, folks, WTAE, Channel 4 Action News out of Pittsburgh, sitting there. I captured them on time-stamped cellular video. The same time as I captured the massive contamination of Western Pennsylvania, District 17. Channel 4 Action News never reported on the fallout, never gave anyone of the thousands of people here in Western Pennsylvania that got dosed with those carcinogens to whatever degree. Each and every one of them could have had an opportunity to tape up their windows and doors or even to evacuate. But that opportunity was taken from them for the sake of those corporations escaping accountability. So the media, they didn't report on where the actual disaster was here in Pennsylvania. They reported on East Palestine, where never was there any wind that blew to the west, and the derailment occurred on the Pennsylvania border, on the outskirts of East Palestine. The winds, there's a complete record on satellite and radar imagery, an irrefutable history captured that shows that all of the winds from the night of the derailment fire on that Friday night on the 3rd of February 2023, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, all the winds it shows them blowing onto Pennsylvanians. Sil Sagano was telling like it was too. He said that the chemicals involved had properties by which they would attract water molecules and would get heavy and fall. They did. I got other video too that probably prompted them to do the burn off. Sunday afternoon, I went up off of Route 51 looking down the tracks, and I captured Norfolk Southern with a guy with a safety vest on there at the east side of the derailment, and they're intentionally burning the shit off, managing a burn off. I sent it out to all the media that I could, and I sent a note attached to the video. I said, what if, this is coming from somebody, some farm boy from Western Pennsylvania. I said, what if these containers, they're really hot, the product is burning, flowing out of them. I thought they were damaged, I didn't realize that they were fucking managing the burn. But I said, what if they get so hot? And I said, they empty out and then they suck oxygen back into them and explode. So that note I sent out with the footage that Sunday afternoon on the 5th of February 2023 with a note, it's like, what if, the big what if. What happened then within 2 hours of me sending out the footage to the media? ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, you name it, everyone in the alphabet that I could think of. So, within 2 hours of me sending that out, Governor DeWine, that criminal, he's a criminal, man. He declares a false state of emergency. And he activates our military, our Army National Guard, to commit a crime against our citizenry. Yeah, I got them on video. I mean, look, all I can say is this: we are not created to see evil. God didn't create us to see evil. That's a fact. So I tell you that, and I can tell you that, and tell you that, and tell you that, and you might not even ever get it. That's what's so strange about this thing. It's so insidious, what I just stated, that you can listen to it again and again, and you might not even get it. I'm going to repeat it for you. I captured WTAE, Channel 4 Action News, sitting there in my video, time-stamped cellular video. They're right there where I capture this massive fallout, where there are smoke clouds that are laden with carcinogenic particles that are dangerous. They're dangerous, man. Insidiously so. I don't like to talk about that. I was symptomatic for a good month and severely symptomatic for nearly a week. Talking about like a burning in my chest, a cough, such fatigue that I could barely get out of bed, but I had to get out of bed to make it to the bathroom because I had fucking diarrhea so bad from the chemical exposure, whatever the fuck it was. A headache, the kind of headache that if anybody talks around you, like you'd encourage them, just don't fucking say anything. That kind of really wicked headache. Shit, it was a lot of shit. The smell changed from the night of the exposure that I had on a Monday night when I was capturing the videos to then the next day, and for the next 3 days. At the night of the exposure with the videos, it smelled like a sweet petro kind of smell. And then the next day in the house, it smelled like there were at least 2 vats of nail polish that were dumped in the house. That's what it smelled like vats. You think 50-gallon drums, like dumped. That's what it smelled like. It was that strong, man. And that's what the smell changed. And it stayed that way for 3 days in the house. And I can tell you that I didn't see a bird in this town for 2 months. And what else? Yeah, that's the truth. When it rained, within a month, it rained twice here. And both times, the particles, when they started evaporating, like when they got wet and they gassed, that's what evaporation, the gas, it smelled just like it did. Like being exposed to the smell and the taste off of Taggart Road, right there at the derailment. So, all it did was pick that shit up and dumped it over here. That's what millions of pounds of that shit. When it disappears off the radar, it's because it's already fucking on the ground. So you can know for how long, the density and everything, you can know how bad. Have a good idea. If an expert were to look at this, they would know it wasn't a radius like they're basing it. Norfolk Southern are only basing it on 5 containers when it was at least 34, and they stated that to the Associated Press. And there's also the video evidence, the brave drone pilot that published his, what he captured. But there's a complete record, of all these things, the amount and the fact that it was all to the east. They have a radius settlement, only basing it on just 5 containers. Well, think of it this way. Half of the people that they're paying didn't even get contaminated with the fucking chemical. They got contaminated with the fucking lie that they're carrying for them. And they're not going to fight for the 34 containers, are they? It's just a way to obfuscate, to make things fucking, to cancel things out and change the perspective of everything, so that later on, if there are thousands of people that have various types of fucking cancer because of the exposure, you could be looking at, if it were, oh my God, all these things then are irrelevant. The radar evidence is super important, and they know that. I don't know if they'll try to destroy all of that evidence somehow. I know Norfolk Southern is trying to do whatever they can to merge with other rail lines and corporations to give themselves a buffer, from what, could happen. But I brought all this up because I was monitored, surveilled. I couldn't get the video out to share with my neighbors. Look, I thought that at first what I was trying to do is I was reaching out to authorities and to even Norfolk Southern. I'm like, look, these chemical companies that are involved in this, where they manufacture the product, certainly they have safety protocols if there's an accident. I said, what do they do? What if somebody gets exposed to this shit where it's manufactured? What do they do? I said, well, that's what needs to be done for these thousands of people over here in Western Pennsylvania, District 17. Nobody, though, will say Pennsylvania. Nobody is stepping up. Nobody has. Even when you see an article today, it's always East Palestine and nearby, there's always nearby, like it's nothing like you think of, maybe, what? They don't realize that where I captured the fallout from the massive burn off of everything that was left of at least 34 containers on that 6th of February 2023. What they don't what they don't realize, it's actually, there's a lot of things they don't realize, but the thought that I had was, what they wouldn't realize is that where I captured the massive fallout of everything, I'm 7 miles from where the derailment occurred. It's like six miles, whatever that is. I think, it's close. When I say it's close to that, but that's a long way, isn't it? So even with when you see on radar, you can see where it all is. It's plain as can be. The night of the derailment fires all the way through. It's that dense for the major fires, the night of the derailment fires. When the plume went up, think of it this way too. The plume took it up, straight up. Massive heat from those massive fires. And then the wind pushed it to the east. Now, think about that for a moment, because that's the only time that anyone, that they'll try to say that East Palestine was contaminated by that. And, the heat takes it up. It's not falling out. The heat takes it up. It carries it right up, so it's not falling out. It's going up. The wind pushes it to the east. And then, like the Honorable Sil Sagano said, the fire chief from the Youngstown Fire Department, who's a hazardous material specialist, he said the chemicals involved, I don't know if he was speaking specifically to vinyl chloride or which one, because there was a cocktail of these chemicals. Like I said, the smell even changed. Like they were just throwing shit on later in the night, even to burn it off. And they did. But the heat took it up there, then the 6th, and then it carried it up high, and then it fell out. And you can see when it fell out in the video that I captured, the videos. And when it disappears off of radar, it's because it's on the ground. And then they kept everything quiet. You can't find any reports of the massive fallout. They did that intentionally. All of the media. If there's those crew, the crew from WTAE, when I first pulled up at the intersection of Route 168 and Route 51, and they had their heads down, I was thinking, man, the first thing I said is, hey, I'll turn my camera off. I want to talk to you guys. I was like, can you fucking believe this? Can you fucking believe they fucking did this? Can you fucking believe it? And I thought that they were as, like, what the fuck? Like I felt. But, no. Theirs was more like somebody had told them, their boss, had said, don't you share that footage or talk about this to anybody. Don't you say nothing. Now, it's fortunate for those crew members that I turned my camera off when I talked to them initially. I sure am grateful in Jesus' name that I captured them on timestamp cellular video. I got the crew. I've got everything, but I didn't, I could have captured them and talked to them. That I didn't do. But I'm glad I didn't, because that could have ruined their lives. It's possible that they won't be known individually, but the people that made the decisions, I can't say what I would have done. I think it's pretty obvious by this, maybe you would say that I would have fucking came right out and screamed it no matter where I was. you know. But I thought initially even ask Norfolk Southern. I did. I said, what can be done? And of course, nobody's going to get back to me. And then I was monitored, and the FBI, a couple agents came out to the house. And there's like, and guess what? We saw the video, your video on Joe Rogan. And I said, yeah. Let me tell you about that thing with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, either his people screen grabbed what it was I had posted immediately on Twitter, immediately. The night of the 6th. Or, somehow he got a hold of it. But check this out. There were 3 separate videos. They're all time-stamped cellular video. The only video he showed was the initial response to me coming out of my house. And my response, initially, that 2-minute video. He didn't show the video with WTAE Channel 4 Action News sitting there under the massive, carcinogenic, industrial, material-laden smoke that is all-encompassing, everywhere, from every angle. It's on us, man. But I look, me being monitored over this, I know I wanted to tell you a thing about Rogan. Rogan is really disgusting. Rogan, he didn't ask my permission. He didn't consult me at all, man. He never says Pennsylvania, and he has somebody on his podcast while he's talking about the video and showing it, my reaction initially when I walked out of my house. The first video. Oh, good Lord. He's got someone on there with him that keeps saying, or maybe they just said it once, I don't know, but they said, they had to do it. Talking about Norfolk Southern. Had to burn that off. That's a narrative. And I'm like, did he have that woman on there intentionally so that she could plant that narrative? And they're going to not say anything about Pennsylvania. East Palestine is the only thing that he mentions. I sent Joe Rogan everything, even the videos of them intentionally burning off the shit the day before what looks to be on the tracks in Pennsylvania. But my thoughts on this are simply that Joe Rogan was fishing. He's a multi-millionaire. I haven't heard of a millionaire yet that doesn't want to be a billionaire or wants to make more money anyway. So Joe Rogan is like he's fishing. In a way. He's going to show Norfolk Southern and those multi-billion-dollar corporations that they were hauling the shit for, show that multi-billion-dollar, call it an oligarchy, corporate oligarchy. He's going to show them he's got the videos. They know if they see the one, that he's got them. He's got them all. But Joe doesn't show anything that's going to have somebody say, what the fuck is that news? Look, WTAE Channel 4. Well, there are a lot of people that will look at that and say, nobody fucking reported on this fallout. Nobody. And they start putting things together pretty quick. You figure out, that the media are working with the Norfolk Southern and its corporations, working to keep it all quiet. So Joe Rogan, he didn't ask my permission to use the footage, and then he didn't even talk to me, consult me whatsoever. Nothing. His lawyers probably told him that, even the worst case scenario, it would only be maybe $20,000 or something I'd squeeze out of him. Yeah, he's a multi-millionaire. What does this mean for him? You know, with those corporations. Now they know Joe Rogan, he could have released all the footage, and this would have meant that Norfolk Southern probably would have been fucking bankrupt. There'd be people. Look, if you don't think, I don't know, do you see a problem with them intentionally not saying anything, allowing things, just people to remain ignorant about being contaminated with millions of pounds of carcinogens? Do you see something wrong with that? Do you see anything wrong with that? Oh, man. So look, there wasn't any formality in my being surveilled. Like every time I would go to share any of the footage, you know, it was made known. I mean, there's the spyware folks that were monitoring me made it obvious. You know, you ain't getting this shit out. You're not sharing it with, just think you're going to share it with anybody. It ain't happening. And, you know, like I said, you know, while that was going on, I understand. I understand that they've got a duty. They've got a job to do. I understand, you know, as pissed off as I might be, you know, when I rationalize, look, you know, it's just like the person with the safety vest on up there where they were burning shit off Sunday afternoon, and that guy's up there just monitoring on his end with a walkie-talkie. Yeah, everything's going, whatever, you know. They're managing a burn-off, you know. Like capturing him. Yeah, I captured him. But you know what? I didn't make the capture about him. Or the crew members, you know. And anyone like that, you know, look. This thing is bigger than them. And you know, if anything, if attention were going to be put on anyone, then I would hope that it would be for God's perfect justice to unfold. You know, which I look, I probably wouldn't have sent out the footage of the illegal burn off that on the tracks would look like it was in Pennsylvania if I would have thought for a moment that they would turn around and Governor DeWine would declare a false state of emergency 2 hours after it sent the video out. And they made up the story, which I'm sure they got from my little note. They're like, oh, there's a container. One container, they said, that was building up pressure. And they had to go, and it was the, whatever it was that holds the pressure, lets it out, wasn't working right. And they said if we don't do something, it could explode. So they said they had to go in and let the pressure off. Hence the name of what they did when they burnt all of that shit off. Well, all of what was left of at least 34 railroad containers that were carrying hazardous materials, they called that a controlled release. Yeah, you look at you go ahead and Google that and you'll find controlled release. That's what they called that. The name. It's because they said they lied and said there was one container that a pressure relief valve was going bad. They said, I'm not really, that laugh is fakey as fucking nervous laugh. It's the worst. Sorry. I thought it was disrespectful. Sorry. It was inappropriate. I'm tired. I'm really out of it right now. But I do want to just say a little bit more about what happened when Governor DeWine declared that false state of emergency on the 5th of February 2023. You see, he activated our Army National Guard to keep people like me out of there from recording. Recording what, you might say? What now? The preparations that they made. The preparations for the massive disposal of everything that was left on the site, that was on the Pennsylvania border, with all the winds blowing to the east. The preparations. I mean, they had to keep people from recording what? Them going in there and putting out the fires that they said that no one could get anywhere near. Then they brought in heavy equipment and dug trenches out along the tracks on both sides, where then they pumped out that highly flammable carcinogenic industrial chemical from the tankers, pumped it out of the tankers, then into those troughs that they made with the heavy equipment that they brought in there to dig that shit out. That was all highly flammable, carcinogenic industrial chemical, highly flammable. Why I say that and keep repeating it is, look, they put the fires out that they said for 3 days straight nobody could get anywhere near. If any of those would have been burning, they couldn't have pumped the shit out and then put it into those troughs that then they lit it up on the 6th when you saw the giant plume. Oh, good Lord. You know, they brought in people from out of state to do that. And I've often wondered, did those fucking contractors, did they like frame a picture of themselves with that fucking plume? Is it hanging as some kind of a success story? You know, highlight of their career in their fucking office. I'm talking about a fucking disposal that contaminated thousands of people to whatever degree with millions of pounds of carcinogens. I don't know, did any of this, what I said, strike you in any way? Look, I saw Joe Rogan then interview Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on his podcast. It put the Trump presidency over the net. So he was, in the end, he was made a kingmaker. And you know, this is what's going to blow your mind. Are you ready? Sorry, I'm so out of it. Listen. J.D. Vance. He was serving as a senator in a different part of Ohio. But J.D., he's a smart guy. He recognized, you know, the moment. What did he do in the moment? Hey, baby. He went to East Palestine. He was serving in constituents in another part of the state of Ohio, but he packed up his bags and went to East Palestine and stood in a stream there. In East Palestine, a stream. And he poked around with a stick and he said, look, this is so contaminated. Look, when I move it, he's like talking about the stream. He uses his office, that he has that public trust. You know, like he's taken an oath, sworn to serve. Look, it's like a seal. Like when he went over there and did that, it's like he used his, you know, there's this clout there is this, what is currency in his testimony, in him saying anything about the matter. There is currency in his words. It leaves, it's just like the same is true with Senator Doug Mastriano from Pennsylvania. He went over there to East Palestine in some hearing that they had, and he said, he came out of it and he said, it wasn't one container, it was 5. When in truth, it wasn't one container, buddy, it was at least 34 railroad containers that were carrying carcinogenic industrial fucking materials that they illegally burnt off. Illegal didn't come out of Doug Mastriano's mouth, and neither did anywhere near 34, but he planted the amount then that Norfolk Southern based their silencing settlements on that I opted out of. And that would be 5 containers. That's all they're basing it on. When they illegally burned off at least 34. But like Doug Mastriano, JD did a similar move, but even more ballsy. JD Vance went over there and put his feet in that stream. Even has a video that he published of him in a stream. What you don't see in the video is him waving his hands over his head. And he's like, here I am, speaking to those multi-billion-dollar corporations, Norfolk Southern, and the rest of that multi-billion-dollar corporate oligarchy. He told them, he's got his hands above his head, really, they see him this way, like, here I am, guys. I'm not just going to tell you that I'll be there for you, but look at me. I'm here right now. I'm helping you to supplant your lying narrative. I'm sure J.D. Vance can read radar and satellite imagery. Irrefutably, it shows that all of the winds blew to the east. The derailment physically was on the Pennsylvania border, and all of the winds blew to the west. To the east. Oh, God. None of the winds blew to the west. None. I tell you, that's how strong the programming is. It actually seeped in and got me. You can't find one bit of evidence that shows anything about ever the contamination ever being blown to the west. Now here's something that they did that's going to blow your mind. If you didn't get it already, let me finish with the thought about J.D. Vance. After J.D. Vance went over there and did that Machiavellian move, the corporate oligarchy said, you know what? Yeah. They told Donald Trump, we're going to put our backing behind you, but we want J.D. Vance as your vice president, okay? Because of what he did, showing himself to be so useful and loyal to those multi-billionaire corporations. That's the truth, folks. What I just said is true. You see, when Biden saw the video that I captured, yeah, I'm nobody, but guess what? The video that I captured is irrefutably what the fuck should put people in prison and fucking sink, Norfolk Southern. They should be gone. If things were how they should be, our federal government should have taken over Norfolk Southern for what they did. It's the truth. So they decided that they were going to back a Trump presidency after they saw that the Biden administration they posted. Excuse me, I'm waiting to see if it's going to keep recording after 3 hours. Wait a minute. Okay, it's still recording. You see, the thing is, when Joe Biden, President Biden, he came out with, his folks came out and said, we see you in Darlington Township. We know what's going on. They said this. I remember watching it and I'm like, holy shit, they're talking to me. It was surreal, man. But it was real. It really happened. When I say talking to me, they're talking to everybody over here. But I mean, it was because of the video that they saw of the massive fallout. There's no disputing that, man. There's nothing. You don't fucking doubt it, man. It's real. It's, you know, everything I've said is true. And that's from the night of the derailment fires all the way through. So, when I say all the way through, I got something else I want to share with you. You see, okay, it's true. Everything I just said about Joe Biden, let me touch upon it just one more time before I move on to what I have to share with you. One more thing. Look, I believe that was the most honorable time in the Biden administration, what they did by defying those multi-billion-dollar corporations when they came out and said to the folks living here, we know what's going on. If you don't see it, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But when the Biden administration came out and said, look, we know they defied those multi-billion-dollar corporations. I mean, you can't find a news report where they're talking about all of the fucking winds blowing all of that shit onto Pennsylvanians. They kept that shit fucking quiet out of the news. They reported on it like it was entirely like East Palestine, where none of the contamination ever blew into. None! And they're not going to fight for 34 or 38, I heard, containers in East Palestine. They're okay with the fucking 5. Because 5, that's all it's based on. 5 containers. A radius settlement when the people to the west didn't get the contamination. I'm happy for them that they didn't. But they're not going to fight for the 34 containers. Everything is a gift. Whatever. The firemen who got $70,000 apiece. The firemen who were told when they arrived at the scene to not put out the fires. The firemen who stood essentially there like they were props. So when the media reported on everything, it looked like the firemen were there to try to put out the fires. The firemen who stood to the west in safety and watched all the shit blow onto Pennsylvanians, even their family and loved ones. And none of them had the fucking decency. I'm sorry, it's true. Look how fucking vile. If you can't see that, I mean, the horror of it goes all the way down to the people that we love and respect the most. our first responders who got snared with the temptation of whatever it was that they did get and were promised somehow. Governor fucking snake-eyed Shapiro. He received a $7 million soft bribe from Norfolk Southern to give out to the first responders. Did Josh Shapiro ask Pennsylvanians, thousands of Pennsylvanians ever, what do you want to do? No, he just sat and watched and listened. And so long as he was staying out of the crosshairs of anybody, saying, what the fuck? Shapiro, you had to have been monitoring what the hell was happening. And those radar reports, they tell you what the altitude of the clouds are, the density, everything. He knew. And just like Delugio, just like Mastriano. These guys, these politicians, an opportunity like JD took advantage of. That's like a shooting star, man. Phenomenon, something you don't see all the time. Even rare. But they don't know it's not a shooting star, it's fucking space, fucking junk debris. I mean, it's like, I'm saying it's worthless. Look, JD may have made it into, being a heartbeat away from the president right now, being president. But what does it say about his character? So let me share something else about this. JD. Yeah, it's true. What I just said. That's why JD is vice president. I know. When I say that, people just it's like nails on a chalkboard. Unless you are, somebody that knows how to exercise humility. I never said I was anybody, but in Jesus' name, I am a working Christ. A tiny I am a working Christ. I had to make sure that everything was said about this matter. And every time I keep trying to bring this up about the, there was no formality in my being surveilled, me being monitored so that these multi-billion-dollar corporations could escape accountability. In truth. So I said to the authorities, I said to President Trump and whoever is monitoring me from federal and state authorities, I've reached out to everybody with this as well. I'm like, I understand, I can see that no one has courage to even address this whole issue of this disaster, to even use words in context like criminal or illegal in context with the illegal burn off of at least 34 railroad containers. And look, the thing is, if I say that, you're not, out of fear, cowardice even, we cover for these corporations because you're afraid. I mean, it's like, it's a human survival strategy. You know, it's understandable. You're going to run over there with the group, I guess, you know, that you're not going to, you know, you don't want to be in the group, you know, that, I don't know, the group that has no power. I guess. I know. Sorry. I should have, if I would have steeped myself in sociology and learn the nomenclature, I mean the names and, you know, the vernacular, whatever it's called. I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for what if I, you know, look, I love sociology. I would like, you know, I'd like to be able to speak their language. I could have a really good conversation with somebody about this because I find it fascinating, you know, in a scientific, like, way, sociological, scientific, if you can, you know what I'm saying. That was like, to observe, to study, to analyze this type of behavior, you know, where you have so many people that are afraid to use the word illegal to describe what it was that was done, even if it's done to their own loved ones, their own family. This kind of survival, and it's the same type of thing, you know, was true for, I'm guessing, for some Germans, you know, during World War II. Nazis were carrying out these atrocities, and some of the atrocities were being committed like right in front of people, and they were making excuses for their cowardice. You know, it's like with the Palestinians, even more blatant is it. You know, the nation state of Israel killing reporters, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that it's censored as much as possible. And, but this whole, excuse me, it's like how people become ignorant. They'll dumb down when it comes to something that is frightening for them. That, you know, yeah. I mean, okay, what am I getting at here? No one is going to do anything. Nobody will do anything. And, you know, I had a friend that I stayed in touch with all these years after being in the Air Force, and him and I have kind of fallen out over this whole thing politically. He's always, you know, like running to, you know, like hug the knees of those that are committing these atrocities, you know, doing so many bad things, the lawlessness, you know, with whoever it is, you know what I mean? You know, I don't know, man. I don't think you should compromise yourself in Jesus' name. I believe that anyone that would cover these crimes that have been committed here, you know, against our citizens, burning off those carcinogens, poisoning, contaminating thousands of our citizens, and doing that all for what? To save time and money. I said that in Jesus' name when I first came out of the house, and that was something that was appointed. It's the Most High God, and you're probably, if you're an atheist, you're like, if you're not, you might be twinged with, because we're flawed with jealousy. Like, who the heck does he think he is? Like, but that's what happened. He was appointed, and the whole matter was appointed. But let me stick to this real quick. It's hard for me extemporaneously. You probably have figured out by now that attention deficit disorder challenged. Pretty easy, huh? So look, yeah, in the VA, I had a script from a doctor that I couldn't afford the prescription, but I had the script and the VA wouldn't help me pay for it, so I could keep my medication. So my wife and I moved up here from Georgia in 2017, and I still haven't unpacked. Yeah. Probably think that sounds insane. You should see all the boxes upstairs. Anyway. So let me finish this, please. Biden, he didn't visit East Palestine I'm not exaggerating, it was like a year after. You can Google that, like after the derailment. And I'll tell you why he didn't. Because everything that I've said about the criminality of this, what Norfolk Southern has done, and those people working hand in hand with them in complicitness, what they have done. Joe Biden didn't want anything to do with it. That's why he didn't go to East Palestine. Yeah, the kind of move to come against those corporations, that's another level. But the best that he could do was what he did, I guess. I wish he would have gone all the way with it. But look, it cost him, or cost Kamala, I'm saying it cost that administration re-election. If they would have had it, they could have had a chance. When they did that, though, they turned the multi-billion-dollar corporate oligarchy against them. I'm against them, and a lot of work, man, went into positioning that narrative. Norfolk Southern did with East Palestine. I mean, all of the reports that were done, all of the little mini documentaries and shit, to position it all in East Palestine. And, with whatever, they had to do it or whatever, I mean, they could have brought in firefighters, special firefighting teams from the Pittsburgh airport or the Cleveland airport or any one of those companies that were involved in the derailment. Those chemical companies, they all have special firefighting teams there where they manufacture the product. They have protocols. I was begging for those protocols for people to be helped. Nobody said anything. Nobody would get back to me. And though because I recognize, whoever made these decisions, the illegal burn off and the hiding of this whole thing, those people, they should, what? They're not gonna, if they're listening to what I'm saying right now, I'm sorry, man. Just like anybody else, when you make a mistake, you have to atone. It's wrong that the precedent here is lawlessness in this situation. This is our own citizenry, man. You know, that stuff could have been offloaded on either side of the tracks and taken to special incinerators that we have. I say we. There are places. There's one in Ohio that a place that deals with nullifying these hazardous properties with hazardous materials, special incinerators and filtration systems to nullify those dangerous properties. So that wasn't done. Why? I think, in Jesus' name, this is more than just think here. I know that there were contracts that were, there were things that were on those rails that were important for contracts to be filled with whatever support was being given to Ukraine. And I think that for every day that they were late, having get that to where it needs to go, that there's a cost in that that derailment. There's contracts for whatever it is that I'm just saying. I think that's what it was. Yeah, they could have taken the time to do it right. They didn't have to do what they did. And I know that everyone that works at Norfolk Southern or wherever the hell, that there are, they're all individuals, man. So, but you do what is right. I don't care if we're 3 years out from it. You still do what is right. You still do what is right. You don't leave the precedents. This lawlessness, man. So that's where it is. Oh, I wanted to mention something else. J.D. Vance, he has himself pictured there in a stream in East Palestine. I don't even know where that stream is running parallel with the tracks, off of Taggart Road. There is water there. There are some ponds to the east of where the derailment happened. And those ponds, wow, there's no way I would want to. I'm just saying, I don't know how long. You see, they're so irresponsible with what they've done. If they were doing the right thing, they would have had everything. Experts talk to the public, tell them what chemicals were involved and what could happen, what they can do to, help their body to fight whatever contamination. Like there's things you can do that can help you to mitigate, what might happen. Nothing has been done. Nothing whatsoever. So, J.D. Vance, I don't know if you didn't get what I just said, man. That's a fact. That's what happened. Joe Rogan, I saw President-elect Trump at the UFC event after the elections. He made sure to go there and he hugged Joe tight, and he said something to him, and I'm pretty sure it was to the effect of, thank you, Joe. Thank you. You helped us do it. He might have said something to him. I don't know if he would humble himself enough to say we couldn't have done it without you. But when Joe Rogan had Trump and J.D. Vance on his podcast, he put them over the net. So that's a fact. What else those corporations can do for Joe Rogan? I mean, they got all kinds of tips and shit. There's ways. They got a friend now, don't they, for life? And so does Chris Delugio and Josh Shapiro. And so does all the rest of the people that are complicit in the hiding of the contamination. The hiding of it, man. And even with the silencing settlement, just basing it on 5 containers, and it's handled like it's nothing. It should have been, there should have been criminal charges brought up, initially. The jurisdiction should have been Pennsylvania, not Ohio. Should have been shared, and it should have been, the weight of it should have been Pennsylvania, since the thousands of people that got contaminated with the chemicals are here. There's something else I wanted to mention. That is, this video came out that I saw of these like aerators, these machines that thrash water in streams and cause it to mist, and then it evaporates. Doesn't have to be a stream, it can be whatever, giant. Like I say, you have an area that's flooded out, and they'll bring these thrashers in that they thrash the water so much and mist it, and it evaporates a lot quicker. That's what it's for. Now, I saw this video in town, East Palestine, whatever, when they had evacuated, the town. They evacuated it for, I believe, 3 days, I'm pretty sure, or 5 days, whatever. But they brought these thrashers in, and in this video you see these thrashers, beating the hell out of this water in this section of the stream by what looks like the community center in East Palestine. And I try to figure out, in my mind, I'm like, where the hell is that stream at? And here's what I think they did. It's not going to be surprising what I'm going to suggest. Now, this is something that I don't know, but I do know that I have seen I know that there are videos of them using those thrashers, aerators, whatever the hell they are, in a stream in East Palestine while the people were evacuated. They did that. Now you think about that. What is worse? Ready? What is worse? A stream that's contaminated going through your town, or that you thrash the stream and you cause it to mist and it evaporates, and the mist carries it all throughout the area around the stream. Like the mist now has carried over, blocks away from where the stream is. Well, common sense would tell you that, that you don't do that, right? Hey, this will be in a playlist, but in the playlist you can see the thrasher. I have the video of one time. You can see where it is and everything. I'm telling you the truth about all of these things. I think what they did is, since there was no evidence of there being there was no evidence of contamination of the cocktail of chemicals that were involved in the burn-off, which was an illegal burn-off. Of course, they're going to call it something else, but that's what it was. Since there was no evidence, you would have people, hear me on this, you already figured out what I'm going to say probably. People would come into town, independent researchers, they take samples from whatever, that they can measure then, what the extent was of contamination. By taking samples throughout, in East Palestine, they would have a good idea. Well, there wasn't any evidence of contamination, so they used those thrashers so that there would be That way, maybe their way of thinking, I think this is what they were thinking, is that, I'm just saying, entertain the thought, what I'm about to say. It makes sense, doesn't it? So, the independent researchers, they find then evidence of contamination. Otherwise, they would be like dumbstruck, like, what the hell is this? And they would figure out pretty quick, oh my God, look, all of the winds were blowing to the east. Okay, I'm telling you the truth. It's in my playlist. They really did that, and I believe that's why they did it. It makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. So, I thought since there wasn't any formality in my being monitored by, state and federal authorities, to protect these multi-billion-dollar entities from being held accountable. They made sure to lock me down. What is, the irrefutable evidence that I do have that should hold some people accountable. Yes, I'd ask, maybe you could drop the formality and help me with this matter of what was done to me while I served honorably in the Army National Guard and then the United States Air Force. I served honorably with distinction. So I thought maybe, would you please, look into these matters and give me a fair and just result over what was done to me while in service to our nation. I opted out of Norfolk Southern's bullshit silencing settlement that's based on 5 containers and with their radius lying the way that they basing it like that there was contamination to the west, which there wasn't. So, oh man. Okay. I thought, see how tired, I'm just so tired right now. I thought, why don't I drop the formality and maybe give me a fair and just result? Would you consider doing that for what was done to me? Well, I served our nation honorably with distinction. Would you mind doing that for me?